Okay, good morning, everyone. So I've started recording now. Okay, and are there any questions or concerns from the previous lecture or anything we have discussed so far? Is anything not clear? Then this is a good time to ask. All right. So if not, then as you know, I've put out the first assignment on Piazza. And I'll just go over quickly. So it's due on, if I remember correctly, it's due on 17th February, which is a Wednesday at 11 p.m., right? And that gives you around 9 to 10 days to do the assignment, which should be more than enough. Um, and yeah, so collaboration is allowed and even encouraged, but of course you do not need to collaborate. There are only 10 students registered in the course, so I've decided that collaboration groups should be no more than 2 people, right? um, and if you're struggling to find a collaborator, you can try to find one on Piazza. You can reach out to everybody, or you can also contact me and I can help you find a collaborator. Crediting students must collaborate only with other crediting students. Those who are auditing can, of course, do whatever they like. They may submit assignments, they may not. If they do, I will try my best to get them marked in a timely fashion. But I may be struggling because no TA has been formally assigned to the course. So, but anyways, so that's one thing. Let's see what else. Um, right. And as far as the assignments are concerned, you may very well ask questions or you may ask for clarifications on Piazza. There is no problem. If there is a question that cannot be answered because it is revealing too much, then either I will answer it privately, or if necessary, I may even omit it. But yeah, don't hesitate in asking questions so long as you're not revealing too much about the solution that you may have already thought of, right? But yeah, definitely it's okay to ask for clarifications. Okay. Good. So yeah, the assignment may seem a bit lengthy, but most of it is actually fairly straightforward. Um, there is one part that is difficult, and I've given a hint there. And you may even ask for an additional hint for some penalty. I think I've mentioned 20% penalty, but that's just an estimate. It might be, I might deduct 1 mark out of 6, so that would not be 20%. That would be less than 20%. Whatever, doesn't matter. The penalty is small, right? That's the main point. So if you need a hint on that problem, you can ask me for a hint and I will give you one. But before that, you should spend sufficient amount of time on trying to solve it on your own. Okay. Good. And the problem marks are fixed. So if I say that a problem is worth 15 marks, then it is worth 15 marks, but the part marks are tentative. So if I say that a part is worth 3 marks, I may change it while marking if it seems necessary. But I've given you a tentative part marking scheme as well. I may not follow it exactly. Okay. Good. Any questions, concerns pertaining to the assignment? Are the collaboration rules clear? Okay, good. All right, so let's do a quick overview of what we have done so far. We have been talking about the edge space of a graph, which is basically the subsets of all the subsets of the edge set of the graph. And we have seen the cycle space, which is a subspace of the edge space. It is generated by the cycles of the graph. However, its members are all even subgraphs of the graph. And cycles are just special types of even subgraphs, right? And we saw in the last lecture that even subgraphs that include cycles are orthogonal to the cuts of the graph, right? And so to quickly remind you about the definition of a cut, if you take any subset of the vertices, let's say x, then you look at all the edges going from x to the complement. So you look at all the edges going from x to x bar, right? And that is, those edges are the cut associated with the set x. So I've written the definition here. The cut associated with x is denoted as partial of x, and that is a subset of the edges of the graph. Okay. And there are these nice cuts called the trivial cuts of the graph. So what is a trivial cut of the graph? Well, it's you look at any vertex and you look at all the edges incident at that vertex. And I will use the shorthand partial of v instead of putting v in a set. Okay. So those are called the trivial cuts of the graph. Okay. And right. So what we discuss is that cuts are orthogonal to the even subgraphs, but we haven't yet proved that the cuts of the graph also comprise a subspace of the edge space. In other words, the symmetric difference of any two cuts is yet another cut. Right? And another thing we are going to ask is, cycles are special types of even subgraphs. What is the corresponding special types of cuts? I'll already tell you what they are. As you can already see in the title of the lecture, it's the bond space of a graph. They are going to be bonds, but we'll define what bonds are, and we will talk about those today as well. Okay, so they're just special types of cuts. Okay, so before we get to bonds, let us discuss the, so let me call this corollary 2.12, which we are yet to prove. We want to prove the following: the symmetric difference of any two cuts is a cut. And we are going to prove this. And the way we will prove it is, well, I'll just write down a few things. Proposition 2.11, which will imply corollary 2.12. So let's take a graph G, and let's take two subsets of the vertices. And what we want to do is we want to think about the symmetric difference of these two cuts. Okay, and we are going to show that this is another cut of the graph. It's partial of blah, where we need to figure out what blah is. Okay, good. So as I mentioned at the end of yesterday's lecture, is we want to look at this drawing, right? So this is a drawing that really facilitates the visualization of cuts, especially of how two cuts may interact with each other, right? So we have the vertex set, the black colored box, and we have partitioned it into two parts in two different ways. The red partition corresponds to partial of x, and the green partition corresponds to partial of y. Okay? And well, when you have two partitions of a set, you're going to get four sets out of that: x intersection y, x bar intersection y, x intersection y bar, and x bar intersection y bar. I think in Bondi Murthy, x intersection y bar, for instance, is written as x minus y. And typically the symbol people use for set theoretic difference is like this. But I'm not a huge fan of this, so I'm going to stick to minus sign. Okay? And I prefer just taking intersections of sets rather than using minus sign at times. Okay? But they're equivalent. Good. So we get these four sets that comprise the entire vertex set of the graph. Does everybody agree with this? Okay, since there is no disagreement, I'll take that as a yes. Good. So has anybody thought of the proof? Has anybody thought of why the symmetric difference of partial x and partial y is another cut? Somebody raised a hand maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, Arnav,
So
yes.
you can take x intersection y and x complement intersection y complements union. That will be
Right.
that'll generate a cut which is equivalent to
That
the
is true.
symmetry.
That is true. So, so let's go through this argument. Can someone, Ravi, can you go through the details of this argument a bit?
Yes, sir. So, like first we have two cuts. One of them is the cut corresponding to set X and the cut corresponding to set Y.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see that in the diagram, it will be from like both of the like all of the edges from X intersection Y
Mm-hmm.
and X intersection Y bar to the other two parts.
Right. X intersection Y and X intersection Y bar to the other two parts.
Yeah. So like right now
Right.
we'll just
So you mean to say something like this. So you are looking at these edges, you're looking at this edge, you're looking at this kind of an edge, and you're looking at this kind of an edge.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's right.
And
So those are which edges again?
these are edges in the cut corresponding to the vertex at X.
Vertex at X. That is correct. All of the edges in partial X are of these four types. Is that correct? No, actually, that's. I don't think this one is included. Maybe I understood you incorrectly.
No. That one is not included.
That one is
Like
not included.
like
Okay.
but there's the one like
Oh,
from
right.
the
I see. Right. So
third
I
to
think
fourth.
I think I made a mistake there. You mean this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. These are the four types of edges included in partial X, right? And what about partial Y? What are the four types of edges included in partial Y?
So again, like the cross edges are
Right.
included.
These are
plus-
included again. So I'll write down multiplied by 2 here.
Yeah, plus the vertical ones.
Right, like this one. Right? So one way to think about this is think about the union. If you want to take the symmetric difference of two sets, first take the union of them and look at which edges appear an even number of times. Here it's going to be either they appear one time or they appear two times. Okay, so the point is, if you look at partial X union partial Y, so I'm suggesting we look at this set, and the way to visualize it in this drawing that we have is these are all the edges that either cross the red line or they cross the green line in this drawing, or they cross both the red line and the green lines, right? The edges that just cross the red line are the edges of type 1 and type 2. So type 1 means one vertex is in X intersection Y and the other vertex is in X bar intersection Y. Okay, so you can write down all these types. I'm not going to spend time on writing all of this, right? So these are the four types of edges that belong to partial of X, the red color partition. Okay. Now there are four types of edges that belong to the green colored partition. Okay, partial Y. These are again the edges of type 3 and 4, which were already in partial of X, but now you also have edges of type 5 and 6. These belong to the green cut, but they do not belong to the red cut. So now let's think about it. The edges of type 3 and 4 appear in both the red cut and the green cut, partial X and partial Y respectively. The edges of type 1, 2, 5 and 6, they only appear in exactly one of the two cuts, either in red or in green. So when you take the symmetric difference, you will get precisely the edges of type 1, 2, 5 and 6. And all of these edges will have to appear, all such edges will have to appear in the symmetric difference. Okay. And what are these edges? What are the edges of type 1, 2, 5 and 6? If you think about this carefully, you see that these are exactly the edges that have, let me shade things a bit, that have one end in the blue shaded part. So I'm shading the whole box, but I'm of course not shading everything. So these are exactly the edges that have one end in X intersection Y bar union X bar intersection Y, and the other end in the complement. in the other two quarters that I have not shaded. Okay, let me write this down. Maybe I'll write it down here. Notice that these edges are precisely the same edges in partial of x intersection y bar union, sorry, x bar intersection y. Okay, and what is this set? What is another way to write this? You either take those elements which are in x but not in y, and you also take elements that are in y but not in x. What does that mean? Is there something I can put here in?
Symmetric.
Exactly. This is nothing but the symmetric difference of x and y. Okay, and this is exactly the set we were looking at. This is partial x, symmetric difference, partial y. Okay, so if you go through this whole argument and you write down all the details, you have a rigorous proof of the statement. Are there any questions? Is everybody following the argument? So the proposition is, this is nothing but the partial of x symmetric difference y. And to write down the full rigorous proof, you just go through the whole argument, write down that there are 6 types of edges in the union, and 2 of these types, 3 and 4, are counted twice, they are cancelled, and the only edges that remain are edges of type 1, 2, 5, and 6. And then you observe that these are exactly the edges in partial of. Okay, and so that means that the symmetric difference of any two cuts is a cut. Okay, so we have proved these statements. Let me just give everybody a few seconds to digest the argument in case it's not clear. But yeah, if anything is not clear, this is really a good time to ask. Ravi, have you raised your hand?
No, sir, I forgot to lower it.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, good. All right, so since there are no questions, I assume that everybody believes these two statements. Okay. And this is another example of me not writing a rigorous proof down, because it's just writing it down and it's actually going to be just a waste of time, right? You all can now write it down for yourself. So when the statement is that straightforward and you can just visualize it, I'm going to rely on that and give the intuition rather than writing down every last detail, which you can also find in the textbook. Okay, good. All right, so that means that the cuts of the graph comprise a subspace of the edge space. Okay, just like the even subgraphs of the graph comprise a subspace that we are calling the cycle space, because it is generated by the cycles of the graph. Okay, and you can now ask the same kind of question here. What is an example of cuts that can be naturally defined, whatever that means, that would generate all the cuts of the graph? Of course, there are going to be multiple such possibilities. Every basis is an answer, for example. But rather than focusing on a basis, we are going to think about what are these special kinds of cuts that correspond to cycles, as in the case of even subgraphs. Okay, so that's what we are going to think about next. But what I want to do before that is I want to make this term rigorous. What do I mean here? Cycles are special even subgraphs. Can someone tell me what is special about cycles? What is one way to define cycles using even subgraphs? let's define cycles using even subgraphs. And somebody's raised a hand. Ravi?
So we can say that a cycle is an even subgraph such that none of its proper subgraphs is also an even subgraph.
Exactly. These are the minimal non-empty even subgraphs. And that follows by the fact that we've already proved that every even subgraph is a disjoint union of cycles. Okay? So cycles are precisely the minimal non-empty. Why do I have to say non-empty? Can anyone tell me? Why can't I just say minimal even subgraphs? Why must I say non-empty? Is the empty graph an even subgraph?
Yes, sir.
Exactly. Right? The empty graph is an even subgraph. Any cycle contains the empty graph. We are viewing cycles as sets of edges for a spanning subgraph, right? That is our viewpoint here. So in that sense, any cycle contains the empty subgraph, and therefore we must include the empty subgraph, right? So cycles are precisely the minimal non-empty even subgraphs. Okay? And in the same sense, we are going to define bonds of a graph. Bonds of a graph G are its minimal non-empty cuts. Okay? So that's one way to formally define bonds. Okay? And let's take an example. Let's see. Okay, supposing I take this example. Okay, something like this. So let's suppose that I'm looking at, this is my whole graph, and I'm looking at the cut this is my x and this is my x bar. Okay, and I'm looking at the cut partial of x. Is this a bond? This set of 5 edges that cross the red colored line, is this a bond of the graph G, where G is the graph I've drawn? Yeah?
No, sir.
No. And why would that be the case?
So we can move the 4 vertices here which are not connected to the triangle to the left hand side.
Right, right. So in other words, you are saying that we can look at these 2 edges. We can call this y, and now partial y is a cut, non-empty cut, because it has 2 edges, and partial y is a proper subset of partial x. Is that right? That would be the same as moving those 4 vertices to the left hand side.
Yes, sir.
Right? And here is another non-empty cut that is contained in partial x, which is partial of z. Partial z has the same properties. So what do you think? We have a good understanding of cycles, right? We can call them minimal non-empty even subgraphs, but there are also other ways of defining cycles. Can anyone tell me another way of defining a cycle that would be covered in a standard undergraduate graph theory course? We did not go through it in this course. What's another way of defining a cycle? It's a regular graph. Can you make it more precise?
Two regular.
It's a two regular graph and connected. Okay, so now we have both the ingredients. Cycles are precisely two regular connected graphs. Every vertex has degree 2 and they are connected, right? So we want to get a similar understanding of bonds of a graph. We want to be able to think about the bonds of a graph more directly. Okay. So any ideas? Any guesses about how can we define the bond of a graph without going through minimal non-empty cut? So I want to get an equivalent definition of a bond of a graph. And you can use this example to guide your guess. So our goal is to get an equivalent definition of a bond of a graph. So think about this example. What happened is you had, you can think of this subgraph, the graph induced by the vertices x bar. I don't know if I've defined this yet. So let me just put a definition here. Induced subgraph. So given a set of edges between two connected complements. Yeah, that actually is, so I understand what you mean. That is actually the correct answer. So let me just put it down more rigorously. Given set X of the vertex set of the graph, the subgraph Gx denotes the subgraph with vertex set X. So you take all the vertices and you take all the edges that have both ends in that set. The edge set is going to be take all the edges of the graph such that F has both ends in X. Okay, so to give you an example, here the graph induced by X is precisely the triangle. However, the graph induced by X bar has a triangle and a quadrilateral, or a 4-cycle, if you like. It looks like this. Okay, so is it clear what an induced subgraph is? So such a subgraph is called an induced subgraph of the graph. Okay, and what Ravi wrote in the chat box is that it's the set of edges between the cut must split the graph into exactly two connected components. That is what Anand wrote. And Ravi wrote that it's a set of edges between connected complements, right? So I understand what both of you mean by that. It's precisely the same thing. It's precisely those cuts of the graph, partial of X, such that the subgraph induced by X and the subgraph induced by X bar are both connected. Whenever this is the case, the cut you have is indeed a minimal non-empty cut, i.e. a bond of the graph. Okay, so these are exactly all cuts partial of X such that the graph induced by X and the graph induced by X bar are both connected. So that is an equivalent definition of bonds of a graph. Okay. So intuitively, this seems true, right? The reason you were able to get another minimal non-empty cut here is because one of the sides was not connected, and then you took a connected component to get another non-empty cut that is contained in the original cut, and therefore the original cut is not minimal, right? So intuitively, this makes sense. So let's write down a rigorous proof of this. Okay, is it clear what we are talking about? Are there any questions or any clarifications required? Okay, if not, then let us write down this statement. So theorem 2.15 is basically an equivalent definition of bonds, which we just discussed. In a connected graph, yeah, we need the graph to be connected, which is an assumption I often make implicitly, but I should have stated it. In a connected graph G, a non-empty cut partial of X is a bond if and only if the graphs induced by X and X bar are both connected. Okay, so whenever one of the two sides is not connected, you will be able to find a smaller non-empty cut. Okay, so let's prove this. So what's the easy direction? Can someone tell me what's the easy direction here?
If both are connected, then it should be a bond.
Okay. If both are connected, then it should be a bond.
No, I
That-
think
Uh-huh.
I think the opposite of that.
Right, the opposite of that. Yeah. So the forward direction is actually the easier direction, and we will go by contrapositive. So if one of them is not connected, then we will show that the cut is not a bond. Okay. So assume that the graph induced by X is not connected. Okay, so let's make a quick drawing here. So we have, I won't use different colors now. So we are looking at this cut partial of X. Okay, and let's suppose that this side, the left side, is not connected. So let's say it has one component and it has some other component, and it could have any number of components. Okay. Well, in this case, look at any one of the components. Take a component H and look at all the edges that belong to partial of the vertex set of H. Okay. Let H be a component of the graph induced by X, and let Y be the vertex set of H. Okay. I claim that partial of Y is a subset of partial of X. Is that true? Does everybody believe this? If everybody believes it, then I won't even bother proving it. Okay, so there's a question on the chat box. What was the first definition of bond? Is that right? Okay. So does anybody want to answer to that? What is the definition of bond that we have already seen? And now we are proving an equivalent definition of bonds. Can someone help out here? What is the definition of bonds that we have already seen? They are minimal non-empty cuts. It is a minimal cut that is non-empty. So it cannot be the empty set. Okay. And the empty set is a cut of any graph, because the empty set is partial of the empty set, which is equal to partial of the whole vertex set. Okay. I will also make another remark in case I haven't already done that. Notice that partial of x is equal to partial of x bar. Okay. So yeah, that's clear from the definition. Okay. So now that we have answered the question, let's come back to where we were. We are assuming that the left side is not connected. We took a component h and we look at its vertex set y. And I claim that partial of y is a subset of partial of x. Is that clear? All the edges that go from y to y bar, they also go from x to x bar. Why is that the case? Notice that there cannot be any edge like this, because h is a component of the graph induced by x. So all the edges which are leaving h, they have to go from the left side to the right side. So you cannot have an edge like that. So any edge that leaves h has to go to the other side, by the definition that h is a component. Okay. So this is because h is a component of the graph induced by x. Okay. And now I claim that this cannot be the empty set. Why? Why can't partial of y be empty?
If it was empty, it won't be included in the bond, right? Otherwise, the bond would be minimal.
It can't be empty because the graph was originally connected.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So it can't be empty because the graph is connected. So that's the explanation. So well, if the graph was not connected, then it's not that's not true, right? So what could happen is you could have a graph like this. So something like this, let's say. If this was your whole graph, then you would have a component h for which partial of y would be empty, right? The problem is the graph is connected, and therefore you cannot have such an cut, an empty. You cannot have an empty cut unless you look at partial of empty or the partial of the whole vertex set, right? And y is not the whole vertex set because y is a subset of x. Okay, and because it is a component, y is also not empty. It has to have something inside it in order to be a component. Okay, so this is because G is connected. Okay, so now what we have is a non-empty cut that is properly contained in partial of x, and therefore partial of x is not a bond. Okay, everybody happy with the first direction? If one of the sides is not connected, then the cut is not a bond. Okay, and now we need to prove the other direction. So now we are going to take cut, and we are going to take a bond which is a minimal non-empty cut, and we want to show that, sorry, the other direction. We have a cut for which both of these sides are connected, and we want to argue that this has to be a bond. Okay. Okay, let's see, how do I want to do this? Okay, so let's do the contrapositive again. Supposing partial x is not a bond. Okay. And in this case, we want to show that at least one of these two sides is not connected. Okay, that would be the contrapositive, and that would prove the theorem. Okay, so let's make a drawing here. Supposing this is not a bond, so let's make our standard drawing without using colors, because I think everybody's already familiar with this. So let's say we have this cut, and we know that it is not a bond. Okay, what does it mean? It means that there exists a cut partial of y, a non-empty cut, such that partial of y is a proper subset of partial of x. Okay, all right. Good. So now let me look at this drawing with the 4 quadrants. Let me put y here and y bar here. Okay, so that should be, there's no problem in making this drawing like that. Any of these quadrants could be empty, we don't know. But what we do know is that there is an edge in the cut partial of y. Okay, and that edge must also belong to partial of x, right? Because every edge in partial of y is in partial of x. So I claim that the cut partial of y cannot contain, in fact, the graph cannot have any edges like this. I claim that G has, let me put a notation actually to make things easier. In fact, what is it I want to say? No, I'm sorry. That is not what I wanted to say. Graph cannot have any edges which are in partial of y, but not in partial of x. So I claim that such edges do not exist in the graph. Okay, so let me put a notation here. E of, I'm using the notation that is used in Bondi Murthy. E of S and T, where S and T are both vertex sets, is the set of all edges that have one end in S and other end in T. Okay, so I claim that there are no edges in the graph between the sets x intersection y and x intersection y bar. Can anyone tell me why? Why can't there be any edge like this? Because partial y is a subset of partial x. Exactly. Any edge that belongs to the cut partial y, which means it crosses the horizontal line in this drawing, it must also cross the vertical line. That's the way to visualize it. Okay. And in the same fashion, there cannot be any edge from x bar intersection y. So this is x bar intersection y to x bar intersection y bar. Again, for the same reason. Since partial y is a subset of partial x. If there was any such edge in either of these sets, if there was any edge in either of these sets, then you would have an element in partial y that is not in partial x, right? Contradicting that partial y is a subset of partial x. Okay, good. So there are no such edges in the graph. I want to now prove that either the graph induced by x is disconnected or the graph induced by x bar is disconnected. So our goal to show that either the left side is disconnected or the right side is disconnected, right? This is what we are trying to prove. We are assuming that the cut is not a bond, and we want to show that at least one of these two graphs is disconnected. Okay, so can anyone tell me what do we need to complete the proof? We will complete the proof here. We just need to write down a bit more. We know that there are no edges like this, like the ones I have drawn here. These kinds of edges don't exist. What do I now need to prove that the graph is, one of the two graphs is disconnected? Yeah. Okay, somebody has raised a hand, I think. Yeah, go ahead. Maybe not. Okay. So, well, since there is no comment, notice that if we can show that there is some vertex in this set, if we can show that this set is not empty, yeah, x bar intersection y, and yeah, so someone has replied x bar intersection y and y bar intersection x is non-empty. Yeah, so that's correct. We will prove that at least one of these sets is non-empty. Either this one is non-empty or this one is non-empty. And if at least one of them is non-empty and you have no edge going from the top left to the bottom left, let's say, then that part would be a disconnected graph, right? So it suffices to argue that either x intersection y bar is not empty or x bar intersection y is not empty. Okay, so let's just go through one of those arguments first. Supposing we can prove that this is not empty, the bottom left part, x intersection y bar. Well, if that is not empty, we already know that x intersection y is not empty. Have I already stated that? That is something we can assume because there is some edge which is in partial y, which is also in partial x. You can adjust notation. You can relabel y and y bar so that x intersection y is not empty. Okay, so this is, I think I forgot to state this. We may relabel y and y bar if necessary to ensure that x intersection y is not empty. Okay, so this one is already not empty. That much we can assume. I'll let you think about that. Okay, so you can put a y here and think about it later. Okay, all four quadrants cannot be empty, so I can easily assume that one of these quadrants is non-empty, and I'm going to assume that x intersection y is non-empty. That's another way to think about it. Okay, And now, if I know that this quadrant is also non-empty, then it would mean that the graph induced by X is disconnected because there are no edges going from the top left to the bottom left. Okay. And similarly, if I can show that X bar intersection Y is non-empty, then again, the graph on the right side will be disconnected. So one of these two graphs is necessarily going to be disconnected. Okay. And the way to show this is, suppose X intersection Y bar is empty and X bar intersection Y is also empty. How is this possible? When is it possible that both of these sets are empty? I claim that this means that X is equal to Y. That is the only case when both of these quadrants can be empty. Okay. Either you can look at it visually, or you can write down the inequalities and prove it. Okay. So if both of these sets are empty, then it actually means that X and Y are exactly the same set. And we know that that's not true because partial Y is a proper subset of partial X. If X and Y were the same, then partial Y would be equal to partial of X. Okay. So then X is equal to Y, contradiction. Since partial Y is a proper subset of partial X. Okay. And so we have basically shown that either the left graph is disconnected or the right graph is disconnected. Are there any questions? It's one of those proofs where you have to think about what's going on, but essentially we have gone through all of the arguments. Right? Okay. So if there are no questions here, then this is it. This is another way to define bonds. These are exactly the cuts for whom both of the sides are connected graphs. Right? In other words, if you remove a bond from the graph, you will get exactly two disconnected components. One of them will be the graph induced by X, and the other one will be the graph induced by X bar. Okay. And I think I've overshot the time by at least 4 or 5 minutes. So this is it for today. And these bonds, let's see. These generate the bond space, the cut space of the graph, which we will call the bond space. So tomorrow, we will just argue that the bonds generate all cuts of the graph. And this is why we call this the bond space of the graph. This is, its members are all cuts of the graph, right? You can try to prove this on your own actually. All you need to show is that every cut is a disjoint union of bonds, just like an even subgraph is a disjoint union of cycles. And to prove that, you can use the proposition we have already proved, that the symmetric difference of any two cuts is a cut. So using this and induction, you can show that every cut is a disjoint union of bonds. Okay, but we'll probably go through the proof tomorrow. It's not difficult. Okay. And on the assignment, you will be showing that the bond space and the cycle space are actually orthogonal subspaces, or are orthogonal complements of each other. This is on assignment 1. Okay, I've broken it down into parts for you so that once you show all of those things, it will follow that these two are orthogonal complements of each other. Okay. All right. So that's all for today. Are there any questions? Sorry for overshooting the time. But yeah, I'm here for another 3-4 minutes. So Anand has a question. Can't we prove the previous statement by contradiction? Assume that both of them are connected, then adding any edge between results in a connected graph. Okay, so assume that both of these are connected. Okay, let me think about this. So we are trying to show the other direction. If both of them are connected, then we want to show that it is a bond. But then how are you proving by contradiction? Because you're already assuming that they are both connected. Did you mean to say one of them is not connected and then proving it? Sorry, I'm confused. Okay, I think I know what you mean. You're proving the reverse direction by contrapositive. So it is not a bond. Then you want to argue that one of them is disconnected. So let's assume that they are both connected. So how would you argue from there? Yeah, could you turn on your mic and explain what's going on? Yeah, there's definitely other ways to prove it, I suppose, but I am not able to see the whole argument. Yeah.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
So we are basically proving g of x and its complement are both connected. Then what you have in between is indeed a bond. So since both of them are connected, that means you cannot add any edge between x and x bar. That means you would get a completely connected graph, right?
So when you say you cannot add any edge, you mean you're adding edges to the graph, or
no, like
you're
say,
not modifying.
I am like I take one arbitrary edge from the cut and I try adding it to the graph. So basically what I'm trying to prove is the minimality of the current cut that we have, assuming that x and x bar are connected.
Okay, so let me make a drawing here. You're assuming that the graph induced by x is connected and the graph induced by x bar is connected.
Okay.
Both of them are connected. Okay.
Now we can prove that this cut is indeed a bond, because if there was a smaller cut, then that means that we the edge, there is at least one edge that is now in the graph, right, from x to x bar.
You mean you can remove an edge? Sorry, I made x bar for both of them. So if this is not a bond, then you would be able to remove some edge and get a smaller cut.
Yeah, but removing that edge would result in a completely connected graph, because these two are connected to begin with, and if you add one more edge in the cut back in there, then you would get a completely connected graph. So it doesn't matter which other edges you pick.
What do you mean
the
by
graph would
completely
always
connected
be,
graph? What do you mean by completely connected?
Each vertex would be reachable from every other vertex. So no matter which other edges remain in the cut, you would never be able to disconnect the graph.
But our graph is already connected, right? So there's no contradiction there.
So I think his argument is, consider the graph in which like G minus the cut that we have. So this graph should be disconnected. Now pick any edge from the cut and add it to the graph. And because both of these parts were connected, this graph become connected So the other thing, the remaining thing cannot be a cut for any such edge. So we can't have a smaller cut inside of that cut.
Yeah, can one of you or both of you collaborate and write down the proof and maybe share it on Piazza with everybody? It would be very nice to have another proof of this, but I am not able to follow all the arguments right now. I would like to see an alternative proof of this. So you are trying to get, you're assuming that they are both connected, and now you want to show that it is a bond. So you're removing all the edges of the cut from the graph. Is that what you're doing, Anand? Supposing I have a cut f equal to partial x.
So like this. Take like you consider a cut with one edge less than the original cut between x and x bar.
Okay. Okay.
So a bond would be some. If we assume that this is not a bond, then the bond would have at least one or more edges smaller than the current cut that we have
That's
between
right.
x and
That's
x
right.
bar.
Yeah.
So the argument is that if you remove even one edge from there, you would get a connected graph. Like if you remove even one edge from the cut.
Okay.
Because
That's
now
right.
x and x bar is connected, right?
Yeah. So if I remove any edge from the cut, then the graph is still connected.
The graph is connected. So now, no matter which edges you pick,
unless that edge is a cut edge, unless the whole cut is just one edge,
in that case, it's trivially a bond, right?
then it is trivially a bond. Okay, so you are assuming that the cut has at least two edges. Now let's say I remove one edge, and then I get another cut.
Yes, and this will not be a cut. That's the argument, because the graph is now connected.
Oh, I see. I see. I see. I see. So you're saying that if both of these sides are connected, if I remove any subset of the edges in this cut, then the whole graph will still be connected because both the sides are connected and there exists an edge going from x to x bar because you have just removed a proper subset of the edges. So because the whole graph is still connected, this is whatever edges you have removed cannot comprise a cut of the graph.
Yes, sir.
In other words, you are using the fact that whenever you remove a cut from the graph has to disconnect, which is clear because it's by definition of cut actually. Right? Okay. Yeah, actually that is the good proof. I like it. So partial x is, okay. This is actually a nice proof. They're both connected graphs. So I remove any subset of the edges, then the graph that remains is still connected, and therefore you cannot have a cut, because whenever you remove a cut from the graph, you must get at least two components. Both of g of x, g induced by x and g induced by x bar, must contain at least one component. This is nice. Why did they not put this proof in the book? I think it's actually simpler. Good. Could you put down this proof on Piazza for everyone else?
Sure, sir.
Okay. Also on Piazza, you can actually do LaTeX. You use double dollar signs and then put the math code in it, right? So it would be really nice for everyone if you could include this proof on Piazza. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But of course, only if you find the time for it. Thanks. Good. So yeah, this is actually a really nice proof. I think I'm convinced, but it would be nice to put down all the details on Piazza, and maybe if it's incomplete, then others can contribute and complete it. Okay. Good. Any other questions or concerns? Also, I should probably stop recording now. It's going. So let me stop recording.